Zeltser and with the United Public Workers for Action. We're having this solidarity rally action today to unite with the French people, the YellowJackets and the French working people. We're with the people of France who are against the Macron government. The French people are fed up and have had enough with austerity. They're fed up with cutbacks and privatization of education. They're fed up with union busting and slave labor conditions. They're fed up with billions of dollars being spent for NATO. The attack on the French working class is part of a global attack. Working people around the world are under attack. In this country, millions of people are facing cutbacks in education. Millions of people are facing austerity. In San Francisco, the wealthy center of tech capitalism, thousands and thousands of people are sleeping in streets. Many are dying. They're living in tents. There are 30,000 people in tents. While you have the billionaires of San Francisco getting tax subsidies, the working people of San Francisco are suffering. Privatizing of the schools, of education is going on in San Francisco and in California. So the struggle of the French working class and the YellowJackets is an international struggle. And the working people of the United States support your struggle. Victory to the YellowJackets! 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 Now, one thing we know about France is that they have a great long tradition of struggle from 1848 to 1879 to 1871 of the Paris Commune to the struggle against the general strike that took place in 1968. And we're 50 years away from that, but the same issues that led to the general strike are taking place today. Ghosn, the head of Nissan, who is a criminal and a crook, while he was taking millions of dollars, he was also cutting the wages and attacking the French workers and the Japanese workers and the American workers. Nissan has made a big effort to prevent the workers in Mississippi from having a union. They want slave labor. They don't want workers' rights. They don't want union rights. So we're talking about an international struggle. We're talking about fighting the multinationals and fighting to defend working people around the world. So we'll say victory to the French working class. 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 French working class. Now today in the United States, the government is shut down because Trump and racists and others want a wall. Well, I think we do need a wall against the crazies, the reactionaries that are running this country and running the world. Because Macron, like Trump, is spending trillions of dollars on war. The U.S. government, the Democrats and Republicans voted to spend $750 billion for war. Why do we need more money for war in this country? I mean, do people feel we need $750 billion for war? No way. When people are dying, when the infrastructure is falling apart in the United States? I was recently in France, in Paris, with the YellowJackets, and the infrastructure in France is actually working. The elevators are not broken. The escalators are not broken in San Francisco. Right here in the center of tech capitalism, the elevators are broken, the escalators are broken, people are dying in the streets, and they call this freedom and democracy. This is freedom of the billionaires to rip off people. That's what this is about. This is the freedom of the billionaires who really own San Francisco and own the world to rip us off, and we're going to stop it. So we're going to have a little music now from our brothers and sisters, from our comrades, who actually, Orion, who I was on strike with in 1968, was the one that said, let's have a rally for the French workers. So I said, Orion, you're right on. We need to solidarize with the French working people. Also, following this action, we're going to be marching to the British consulate and demanding that they not arrest Julian Assange. Because one of the things Julian Assange did in WikiLeaks is to expose the corruption, to expose the lies, to expose the war crimes of the United States. I mean, that's why they hate him so much. Now, wouldn't you know it, these politicians, U.S. capitalist politicians, are talking for the prosecution of Assange. Are they talking about the prosecution of the people that murdered in cold blood the Iraqi people? Are they talking about the criminals around the world who are ripping the people off? No, it's Julian Assange. He's the enemy. So welcome Gigi and Orion.
Let's see, this is two. Thank you. Thank you. Let's hear it for the French workers. What kind of pie? Hockey pie. Here are the children. Okay, somebody's going to have to hold the mic for me. We got a little verse for the blues. And the chorus goes, they never change, they never change. They shoot us down without shame. They never change, they never change. It's the same old capitalist game. So the chorus goes, we support the French workers.
That's not
Rebellion
A.
today.
It's not A, what is it?
E.
E.
Everybody together. We support the French workers today. I said we support the French workers today. They're showing the world resistance is the way. French workers wanna raising their minimum pay. I said the French workers wanna raise in their minimum pay. They're showing the world resistance. Let's hear that. They're showing the world resistance is the way. They never change, they never change. They shoot us down without shame. By the way, 9 French workers have been killed during this rebellion. There was 79,000 police in Paris. And today, the YellowJackets have decided they are marching in Paris. I saw them on RT live stream. You can check out live stream. And they're marching today. I saw them at 4 o'clock this morning, whatever time, France time. And they're marching today in Paris, but their main target is Versailles. Yep. So check out the news. They're ratcheting up the struggle. The fires of rebellion are raging in France. French workers want to raise the minimum pay. Yeah, they're raising the minimum wage 100 euros. Let's hear it for the French workers. They're raising the minimum wage 100 euros, and they're not taxing the diesel fuel. And they're not taxing the pensions. Hey, that's where it's at. The French workers want to raise the minimum pay today. French workers want to raise the minimum pay. They're showing us the world. They're showing us in the world resistance is the way. Thousands of families poisoned in Flint, Michigan. That's right. Thousands of families are poisoned in Flint, Michigan. It's time to raise the banner and join the resistance once again. They never change, they never change. They shoot us down without shame. They never change. It's that dirty, rotten, low-down, murdering capitalist game.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ori and Gigi. And
Chelsea Manning when I don't know.
okay, we'll do that a little later. Okay. So you want to speak? Okay, yeah. Well, one of the things that we are facing here in San Francisco, along with the French workers, is growing repression. The police are murdering people, African Americans and others. They spend more on police and prisons in California than they do on education. And what does it say about this country, about California, this rich state, that more money is being spent on prisons and police than education? I say we pay people to go to school. We should close these prisons and put them in education in schools. And yet young people graduate and they owe thousands of dollars to the banks in debt. This is what we're talking about. Education in capitalism is for profit, and that's what they're interested in. So one of our speakers today is a member of my union, the Newspaper Guild, a retired member, a typesetter. Welcome, John Holmes.
Hi there. I was in France in June. There was a rail strike. There's a rail strike. Maybe some of you have heard about it. Can you hear me? Actually, heck, I'm loud. I don't even need this thing. Okay, fine. Anyway, so I was in France in June, and there was a long, very important rail workers strike that was going on. And let me tell you something about French workers. They're militant. This rally, there was only 500 people about it, and everyone was disappointed because the usual rally is like 10,000 people, right? And the high point of the rally was they would throw smoke bombs, which are things that rail workers use on the tracks for various purposes. And the smoke bombs were so intense that I thought it was tear gas. I had to have that explained to me. French workers are extremely militant, but their leadership is in its own way just as rotten as the leaders of the unions that we have here in America. At first, the unions wanted to have absolutely nothing to do with the yellow vest movement. What's needed is, now I have to say, the demands of this movement are a mixed bag. Many of them are great. Some of them are not so great. They've got anti-immigrant demands in there. They're even calling for more money for more cops, which is really pretty stupid given the way that the police have been brutalizing them. But this is a situation in which the workers need to unite and take leadership of this movement. And that's not what's being done, and that's what needs to be done. And that's what needs to be done here in America. The workers in America need to unite and take leadership of the movements in defense of immigrants, in defense of black people. That's what's needed in France. That's what's needed in the United States. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. So this is an anti-racist movement. What we know is that this government, the Trump government, are blaming immigrants for the unemployment. They want to spend billions for a wall. But the fact of the matter is the United States and Hillary Clinton was involved in the Honduran coup to put in a military government, which led to people being forced to come to this country. NAFTA, which the Democrats and Republicans have supported to get it passed, NAFTA led to the privatization of the land, the ejidos, so farm workers couldn't make a living. They were forced to immigrate to the United States. They get kicked out of the United States, and now they're working as slave labor in San Quintin. The corporate trade agreements that Macron and that Trump and the Democrats support are anti-labor, are anti-working class. What they're about is making more profit. What they're about is destroying jobs, outsourcing, privatization of jobs. And Trump promised people in the United States he was going to create jobs. What happened to General Motors? What happened to General Motors? They closed down their plants. That's what happened to General Motors, because they're interested in profit. General Motors builds more cars in China than they do in the United States. So we're talking about not American capital, we're talking about international capital. That's really what's going on in this country. There's a struggle against international capital and the multinationals, and that's why the struggle of the French working class is important, because they are struggling against the same things. So our next speaker, Ricardo, you want to speak about, we want to talk about the struggle of the Puerto Rican people, because Puerto Rico, which is a colony of the United States, has been exploited for since 1889. We, the United States, said we were going to bring democracy to Puerto Rico. Have you heard that word before, democracy? Have people heard the word democracy? Well, the United States has been telling people that in Puerto Rico we were going to bring democracy, in the Philippines and in Cuba. And France says they were going to bring democracy to Africa, the countries of Africa like Libya. Actually, they were bringing repression, they were bringing exploitation. So welcome, Ricardo Ortiz.
Good afternoon. What's going on? Oh, right here. Yes, France is the country of the Commune and also the country of the French Revolution. But also, France is an imperialist country. France, since the 1970s, has made more than 40 invasions to the continent of Africa, starting with Chad, the Ivory Coast, Libya. I mean, France has like probably 11 or 10 military bases in the continent of Africa. France, right here, not far from here in the Pacific, has a colony called New Caledonia, which also has a struggle for self-determination. And during the 80s, the French government sent a military task force to crush a movement for self-determination in there. So, and who can forget the blowing up of the Greenpeace, that ship that was a ship to monitor and to oppose nuclear exercises in the Pacific. And it was discovered beyond any reasonable doubt that the French government had a sinister hand in the destruction of the Greenpeace. It is proven beyond any reasonable doubt. So, talking about foreign debt, Comrade Steve mentioned, you know, United States imperialism blood-sucking the country of Puerto Rico, an oppressed nation in the Caribbean that has been oppressed since 1898. The French corporations and banks, they also have a number of African countries, like Steve has mentioned, indebted with debt. The French banks are among the first 20 financial institutions in the world. Mining, there are corporations, the French mining corporation owns a lot of mining interests in the Congo. Actually, in 1982, for those of you that France only produces nice pastries, France sent a military task force to the Congo, to the Katanga province, along with the Belgian army, to crush people over there that were rebelling against these French corporate interests. So, France is not just a touristic nice country that has this history of the French Revolution, the Commune, and 68. You know, we have solidarity with the French workers. The French workers are our brothers and sisters. They are our class brothers. And we do support every struggle that they wage. But at the same time, we stand in solidarity with the victims of French oppression. Haiti, thank you for mentioning. I mean, even through the 20th century, at times French sent military elements to Haiti. Actually, they gave political asylum to Jean-Claude Duvalier. He was flown, that dictator that was himself proclaimed him and his father dictators for life in Haiti, supported at the behest of the United States and France itself. So we have to have these things very clear in our mind that, you know, the European Union is not a merely, you know, club of countries that are meeting in a coffee house to have fun or talk peace and solidarity. The European Union is an institution that has cohesion among European imperialists to compete with the United States imperialists. That's what it is. That's what it is, and we have to make that clear. and to have it clear. And what is happening in the world right now, it is this dangerous game that these imperialist countries are playing against each other. This country, the United States, which is the most dangerous imperialist country of all, is trying to resuscitate and create a new Cold War. You know, now they're bringing this crazy fantasy that the Russians are a threat to us. The Russian people are not a threat to us. They are not. They are our friends. They are our brothers and sisters. And the U.S. capitalists, they just want to take resources in Eastern Europe. They want to compete with the German imperialists that own a lot of the resources that were privatized in Eastern Europe. Siemens now owns a lot of energy that comes from the former Soviet Union to Europe. So that's what it is. It's a competition amongst these crazy monopolies. They are trying to isolate China. This is what the United States also is doing, trying to create a dangerous situation with our brothers and sisters from the Pacific. The Chinese people are our brothers and sisters, and we also demand that the United States stop threatening and stop isolating the People's Republic of China. We are against this empire that is just supporting war and creating tension and exploitation. Down with the French capitalists, down with the American capitalists, and long live the workers of the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we were there, I was there on the 25th of November, of November. And, you know, the right wing and Macron and other opponents of the Yellow Jackets have said that these were all racist right-wing parties there that were actually doing this thing. But in the many people I talked to, I interviewed, they were working class people, they were retirees, they were professors, they were medical doctors, there were mechanics who were protesting the austerity. The inability, teachers talked about privatization. One student we met said that he had gone to Sofia to study English. He came back to France to study English. All they had was one class, one semester. So he said, how can I learn English with one semester class? So there's a cutback of public education in France as part of the privatization and the austerity. And France has a great health system. They're hurting the health system. They're outsourcing the health work. So we in the United States, of course, have no health care system. We have private capitalists control the healthcare system in which they only want to take care of you if they make money. And people are literally dying because they can't get treatment. People are going bankrupt because they can't get treatment. People are losing their homes. The highest cause of bankruptcy in the United States is healthcare costs. That's a crime. Everyone should be entitled to healthcare. Now, we heard yesterday that Trump said he's going to pull out of Syria. And we support that, but I think he's going to continue to bomb them. The United States has spent $250 billion on Syria. What did they do? They destroyed the cities. What right do American troops have to be in Syria? Did anyone vote for that? Did anyone vote to invade Syria? Did anyone vote for troops? Did anyone vote to spend $250 billion when we can't even have public health care in this country? The money goes to war profiteers. And guess what? Guess what? Macron announced that France is going to be staying in Syria. Can you believe that? This rotten, reactionary Macron government says even though the United States has left Syria, they're going to stay. And I have to say to the French working class, we don't need more militarization. Our enemies are not the Chinese and the Russians. The trade war that is now developing in this world is not about helping people. It's about corporations. It's about billionaires cornering the market. In fact, when I was in France, I was at a computer conference, and what they were saying is the main issue in the computer world, from their point of view, the Europeans, is California and China against Europe. That's what they were saying. In other words, the competition between California and China against Europe. Now, I have to say, we live in San Francisco. This solidarity rally is for the French workers. Our struggle is not with the French people. Our struggle is not with the Russian people. Our struggle is not with the Chinese people. It's against these multinationals who pit us against each other, who make billions of dollars while people die in the streets of San Francisco. That's our real struggle. That's what the real issues are. And that's what we have to really stand up against. And one of the issues that is also going on is the role of Turkey and the attack on the Turkish academics and the rights of the Turkish people in Erdogan. And we have Mehmet Bayram with the LaborNet Turkey who's going to speak a little bit about that.
Thank you, brothers and sisters. First, we have to understand that anywhere in the world, when the working class rises, when there is a resistance, it is not bound only by that country. The effect goes much more than that country. So especially in the globalized world that we are in, we have to understand that something that happens in France affects what happens here. We are bound together by being the working class of the world. So what France does, when French working class resists, it is the resistance of the working class in the United States. And what we do here affects the workers in Turkey. We have to understand when there's an oppression, the oppression that the French working class is experiencing is the same oppression that the Turkish or the Kurdish working class is experiencing in Turkey, and the American and Mexican working class.
Brothers and sisters, I think it's very appropriate that we march from the French consulate to the British consulate because these governments are both criminal governments. They're hands in hand. They're both imperialist governments, and they're both governments who really want to shut up Julian Assange. They not only want to crush the working people in Britain, which they've been doing, austerity policy, privatization, but they want Julian Assange arrested. They want him put away. And why do they want him put away? They want him put away because he's exposing their crimes. That's why they want him put away, because Julian Assange and WikiLeaks have exposed the vile, terroristic activities of the U.S. government and the British government and the capitalists. And they hate that. They hate to be outed and exposed for who they are and what they are. The May government is a criminal government. They're killing thousands of people. They're privatizing health care. People are dying because they can't get into hospitals in Britain. They're attacking the students. They're attacking the workers in Britain. And we are going to have a song by Gwen about Chelsea Manning and his relevance to this struggle. So welcome, Gwen.
Okay, thank you. Someone's going to have to hold it. You holding it? Okay. It's about WikiLeaks and Chelsea Manning. Everybody's listening to WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks. Chelsea Manning linked to WikiLeaks. She's our hero because she linked to WikiLeaks. Telling the truth, it ain't no crime. But Chelsea was in prison doing time. Now Chelsea's out of prison right now, so she can link some more to WikiLeaks. We never torture. That's what we say. But we're breaking the law every single day. That's why we took her clothes away. So we finally got her out of prison. And she is out today.
Yippee!
So that she can tell more truth to WikiLeaks. She told the truth to stop a war. Is that the kind of thing we want to torture for? We finally got her out of prison so she can link some more to WikiLeaks. Tell more truth to WikiLeaks.
Yay!
That's a great song by, what's her name? Oh, Dolores Hellman wrote that.
You want to talk about what you've been doing in your music? Trying to get your music out about these issues?
Well,
We got a
You're
new
a retired IBW member.
Yeah, I am retired IBW. I was a electrician for almost 30 years and retired now. And I try to fight against war and fight to free Assange. And you only do as much as you can do, but I do what I can.
And she's also got a new song called Russia Did It.
I did, but I haven't got it.
Russia did it.
Got a real good one.
It's based on Whip It.
Russia is behind everything. You know that's what.
It's based on Whip It. You know, once I learned Whip It, da 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 da. Da 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 da. Russia did it.
She's got some.
I got all the words and everything, but we haven't perfected it yet. But next time.
Next time.
Yeah, we're gonna put it in comments in all the places like RT and our friend what's his name, Jimmy Dore knows the score, you know, and Consortium, you know. Yes.
Okay, well, thank you, both of you, for the great music, and we need music. And we're here today at the British consulate. It's closed, but that doesn't matter to us because what we're doing is getting the word out. This is being streamed live worldwide. And this British government, as I was saying earlier, the May government is a criminal government. And they are a criminal government because they are attacking the working class. They're stealing from workers. They're protecting the billionaires and the rip-off artists that Julian Assange exposed. That's very dangerous when you expose the real criminals because the war crimes of these governments are not unique. They've been going on for centuries. The British government and British imperialism, like French imperialism, like U.S. imperialism, has a long, long history of attacking the working class, of ripping off the people of the world. And we have a speaker now who's going to talk about the issue of Julian Assange and also is a worker fighting for decent wages, conditions, and against the ripoff at the University of California. Welcome, Lisa Milos.
I think that one of the things that we need to realize is that there's a lot of journalists in this country who continue to attack or not even they're not really defending Julian Assange or WikiLeaks. In fact, they've joined the forces of supposedly accusing him of bringing us Trump. First of all, we need to set something straight. WikiLeaks, in particular, has, if not for WikiLeaks, we would not have a lot of the information that has come out. And if we really support the First Amendment, as so many journalists say, then they should support WikiLeaks, because without WikiLeaks, if they had been doing their job to begin with, there would not have been a need for WikiLeaks to begin with. Now, one of the things that is interesting is that among the cables that were released by WikiLeaks, for example, and these are just like 9 or 12 different examples, but we learned that the Saudi Arabia offered a bribe to the United Kingdom of $100,000 to quote-unquote help the UK campaign to be on the Human Rights Council. Part of the deal offered by the UK was a vote swap that saw Saudi Arabia leading the Human Rights Council. Saudi Arabia leading the Human Rights Council. Saudi Arabia, who has been beheading women, beheading people. Okay. The UK has been involved in that. We've also seen that without WikiLeaks, we would not have learned that the IAEA had warned Japan about the safety issues at nuclear plants in 2009, years before the Fukushima disaster, particularly that its power plants could not withstand powerful earthquakes. Without WikiLeaks, we would not have learned that the U.S. has a manual for unconventional warfare, active policy doctrine that was created in 2008, okay? 2008, for U.S. Special Forces for when they are overthrowing a government, okay? Without WikiLeaks, okay, the people, thanks to WikiLeaks, people have been freed from Pakistani prisons based on the cables that have been used in evidence in court. Thanks to WikiLeaks, El Masri, a completely innocent German citizen, snatched off the streets, detained, tortured, and dumped on the streets of Albania, took a case to the European Council of Human Rights using 6 cables of WikiLeaks in evidence. The Minton report detailed how Dutch multinational company Trafigura had dumped toxic waste in the Ivory Coast affecting 108,000 people. The report had been suppressed through a super injunction. There are so many other things that, thanks to WikiLeaks, we know. And that's part of the problem. That's why they want to set example against Julian Assange. Julian Assange is a hero. We might not always agree with everything that he says. We don't have to. But the function that WikiLeaks plays, right, the function that he has, the role that he has played in WikiLeaks has been very important for democracy throughout the world and for people to find out what the governments are doing. And we should openly support Julian Assange. We should also try to counteract the notion that somehow or another Trump is here because of Julian Assange, because in reality, the vote system has been, the voter suppression system by the Koch-funded corporations and all those, basically all those machinations that they've been doing, they've been doing it for decades. They've been suppressing our vote. They've been gerrymandering. They've been paying millions and billions of dollars and putting millions and billions of dollars to disenfranchise voters, and they've been doing it. And Greg Palast has been reporting this and documenting this since the year 2000. And the Democrats continue to avoid talking about that issue. Instead, they want to blame a foreign government. You know, whether or not Russia did it or not, somehow influenced the elections, I can't say because none of us really know for sure. But to tell you the truth, what has really been affecting the elections has been the voter suppression, where people have gone out to vote. And one of the clearest examples has been the corruption in Alabama, for example, with Brian Kemp, the Secretary of State, who was also running for governor, and he was in charge of who was going to be able to vote. He literally purged 346,000 voters from the voter rolls, mostly African American, and took away the chances of Stacey Abrams to become the governor, the first African American governor in Alabama. However, she did not concede the election, and she's fighting it. And so we need to really look at home. We need to look at home when we look at voter suppression and lack of democracy, and not blame Julian Assange for that.
We had no one to vote for.
Yep.
That's true.
We have a political vacuum in this country. Now, why are the Democrats and Republicans united against Julian Assange? Because his WikiLeaks exposed the crimes of both. They exposed the crimes of Bush during the Iraq War. They exposed the crimes of Hillary Clinton. Now, there are a lot of people here who say that Hillary Clinton should have won the election. Well, what we learned from WikiLeaks is that Hillary Clinton was personally responsible in overthrowing the Honduran government and setting up a military government. Now, people blame the migrants, the immigrants, for coming to this country. Hillary Clinton is personally responsible for driving people in Honduras to force them to come to this country. Hillary Clinton, she committed a war crime by supporting the overthrow of the Honduran government. And as a result of that, thousands and thousands of people have been killed, children have been made homeless, and the Honduran people have been driven to escape with their life on the border. So let's not just talk about Trump. Hillary Clinton has blood on her hands. She has blood on her hands for what she has done. And the WikiLeaks exposed that. The WikiLeaks showed that she was personally involved in overthrowing the Honduran government for who? For the multinationals and these butchers in Honduras. The generals, these criminals. That's what she did. So when people talk about Hillary Clinton, she has to be tried as a war criminal. That's what should happen to Hillary Clinton. And these people who say the Russians did it, the Russians have their own crimes. Putin is an oligarch. But that doesn't excuse U.S. crimes, U.S. imperialism. The other aspect we talk about the climate and Hillary Clinton. One of the things the WikiLeaks exposed was that Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, was going to Bulgaria and coercing countries in Eastern Europe to do fracking. She was demanding that these countries did fracking. Now, this Hillary Clinton and the Democrats claim to be for the environment. My ass. The Democrats aren't for the environment because Hillary Clinton was personally involved in demanding that the Eastern European countries engage in fracking at the behest of Chevron and these other corporations, these murderous corporations who are murdering people and polluting people all over the world. And we have here in San Francisco PG&E a couple blocks down the road. And the newsman who was doing the videotaping of our rally for the French workers was coughing and choking because of the fumes that we had to endure as a result of that. And thousands of people lost their homes. Who's responsible for that? It's PG&E, this private utility, who cares more about profiteering and making money than protecting the people of California. These executives need to be prosecuted and be in prison. When you talk about the real crimes, who's calling for the criminal prosecution? Who's talking about public control of the utilities? We've got to kick these bastards out, and it should be a public utility for the people of California, not for the profiteers. And the same with the energy companies. These energy companies are a bunch of gangsters. And the politicians, the Democrats and Republicans, are their shills. That's the reality, and that's, again, what WikiLeaks exposed. He exposed the connection between the capitalist politicians and the criminal corporations that really run America and run the world. That's very dangerous. They have valid reason to put him away from their point of view, because he exposed a lot of their crimes. And when you expose people's crimes, you got to be taken care of. They would like to put him in Guantanamo. They would like to kill him. But we can say this. Recently, I think 20, 30 German members of parliament came to the support of Julian Assange. They said he should not be jailed. He should have freedom. And they said that the attempt to suppress Julian Assange is an attack on the right of democratic rights of journalists and whistleblowers. So I applaud them, and we have to build a movement for Julian Assange. Now, this coming Saturday is going to be a board meeting of KPFA radio, and we have the address. Saturday, and the National Pacifica Board has voted to defend and call for the freedom of Julian Assange, which I applaud. That's a real victory. But you wouldn't know it at KPFA, because a lot of KPFA programming is about the big bad Russians. The Russians this, the Russians are confusing the African-American people. That's what the Russians are doing. The Russians are doing that. The Russians are confusing African Americans not to vote for Hillary Clinton. That's what's being propagated on KPFA. I mean, the African Americans are so stupid that they're going to listen to Russian propaganda about the Democrats. It's racist ideology. I mean, African Americans, like everybody, Native Americans, everybody, they can make up their own minds. They know what Hillary Clinton did to them and is doing to them. That's why they voted against Hillary Clinton. In any event, when we brought this before the KPFA local station board, Carol Wolfley, who's the secretary of the board, she came over to me and said, look, we've got to delete part of your resolution. We've got to delete part of your resolution. I said, well, what part? The part that calls for the freedom and defense of Julian Assange. The freedom and defense of Julian Assange. She said, we've got to delete that. I said, well, why would you want to delete that? That's the main part of the resolution. So she said, well, we should just do information about Julian Assange. We shouldn't take a position for freedom and for defense of Julian Assange. Who are these people at KPFA that are supposed to be representing us? KPFA should be in the forefront of defending Julian Assange. Whistleblowers, journalists need to be defended, because journalists at KPFA and Pacifica are being hounded. I mean, Randy Credico is being hounded by the U.S. Congress. So if we don't defend our own journalists, how are we going to defend anybody else? And when you talk about, they've dropped the wording free speech radio, no longer free speech radio. And there's a reason for that, because they don't want to defend Julian Assange at KPFA. That's why they dropped it. Free speech radio means free speech radio, and they are afraid of having that. So there's going to be a meeting of the KPFA local station board at 10 o'clock on Saturday. You can go to kpfa.org and see where it's at. It's a library, 1901 Russell Street. So we're going to have a press conference there talking not only about the effort to prevent solidarity with Julian Assange, but also the same board voted to ban videotaping at a KPFA public meeting. I mean, can you imagine this? A KPFA, a community radio station, says they're going to ban videotaping at a public board meeting of the KPFA. Why would you want to ban videotaping? Under the Brown Act in California, government meetings are videotaped. And not only did they ban videotaping, they said that, well, we're going to prevent you from doing a roll call unless you get a majority of the vote, which means that people who are listening to the audio of the meeting would not know how people voted. So, again, it's a destruction of transparency. They don't want people to know what's going on. And this has to be challenged. So we're going to be 10 o'clock at the library having a press conference about the need to defend Julian Assange, free him, and against the censorship, against the banning of videotaping. If you're afraid to be videotaped, then you shouldn't be speaking at a public meeting, and this is a public meeting. So are there other people who would like to speak? Julian Assange. Okay, wait, yeah. Okay, free. No? Well, okay, wait. Okay, then you're next.
Yeah, a couple of things about, my name is Ricardo Ortiz. I'm a member of the Labor Action Committee to defend Mumia Abu Jamal. I'm an activist for Puerto Rican independence, and I work as a volunteer with YellowVests, among other things. So let's begin by, starting to define what is the British government. And, the British government is an imperialist government. The British, monarchy and parliament and so on defends monopoly companies such as British Petroleum and Barclays banks and the Bank of London and so many multinationals that do exploit in the third world, particularly in Africa. The British government sells weaponry to countries such as one that was mentioned by one of the previous speakers, Saudi Arabia, and the like. The British government is a so-called NATO partner that has sent troops to every imperialist war that the United States intervenes. And if it doesn't intervene militarily directly, they do use the so-called intelligence services, such as the MI6, that now it has been revealed information, have been documents that have been declassified, that, the British government even asked the CIA to help them find information about the mining strikers in the United Kingdom in 1981. Such is the nature of the reactionary character of the British imperialist government. Let's make one thing clear. The British government waged a war against the country of Argentina because of the Argentinians' claim, a just claim over the island, the archipelago of the Falklands. And actually, they sent a so-called immense military task force to destroy and crush and, to avoid that claim could be realized. The British government also helped Augusto Pinochet, the dictator of Chile. Actually, when the judge Baltasar Garzón in Spain issued an international warrant for that reactionary dictator, it was the British government who refused to send it to him. And actually, the so-called Iron Lady visited Pinochet, where he was in a nice mansion in the countryside of Britain, and proclaimed that the hero, and I'm quoting her words, of the Falkland Islands was the dictator Pinochet. That's what the British government it is for you. That's what it is. So we should support Julian Assange. Julian Assange is a hero such as Daniel Ellsberg, Joseph Chelsea Manning, and also called others whistleblowers that have exploited capitalist exploitation in the world. And, all these lies about Russia, etc. I want to finish what I'm saying right here. I just want to say a couple of things, about, supposedly because of WikiLeaks, Hillary Clinton lost the elections in the United States. And let's see who is Hillary Clinton. The person that said that she supported a no-fly zone over Syria. That's what she said in the campaign. What would that resulted in a war? That was who Hillary Clinton was and is, a warmonger, a person that has stood on the board of Walmart, one of the most exploitative corporations in the world, and she was a member of that corporation. When she was young, as a lawyer, she initiated her reactionary career being a lawyer in the Rose Law Firm in Little Rock, Arkansas, who defends none other than Walmart. That's Hillary Clinton for you. Hillary Clinton, she boasted with joy when Libya was bombed mercilessly by the United States and NATO. She laughed and she started, having fun by the death of the President Muammar Gaddafi. She was enjoying the suffering of thousands of people in Libya that were victims of the imperialist bombing. So who would believe that the United States government, with the national security apparatus, with the CIA, with the Defense Intelligence Agency, with, all these gathering of intelligence agencies that number about more than 15 American intelligence agencies, any country could really affect the electoral system in the United States? Can anybody be so foolish to believe that the most powerful intelligence apparatus in the world would have not prevented that? You gotta be crazy if you believe that that could happen. I just want to end by saying, free Julian Assange, and long live the workers of the world. Thank you.
Free Julian Assange. 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 Okay, our next speaker is John Holmes, who's a member of my union, CWA, and also with the Peralta Federation of Teachers.
Yeah. Up for the third time. Anyway.
Closer.
Have to be closer. Okay. So, yes, so like Steve said, I'm currently I've been in the labor movement for quite a while, and I'm currently teaching American history at Merritt College, the proud home of the Black Panther Party, although currently falling apart. Okay, now, as for Julian Assange, I think a good number of you have probably heard me speak on Julian Assange before at a couple of forums, so I don't want to repeat myself too much. But do people still remember the phony rape accusations against Julian Assange, which were so phony that they finally had to be dropped? Basically, there's a classical example of what they call in the side game the honeypot, namely this Swedish woman who was a cousin of the commander of Swedish forces in Afghanistan. There, of course, to liberate the women of Afghanistan, managed to get a former groupie of Lou Reed, who had attached herself together with Ms. 007 to Julian Assange to accuse him of not using a condom or something like that. So after the accusation was made and it blew up into what happened, the Lou Reed groupie wanted to withdraw the accusation, but she wasn't allowed. And the accusation was so bad that for 5 years, the Swedes refused to even be willing to interview Julian Assange and get his side of the story until he agreed to give himself up and turn himself over to Swedish authorities, where he would have been promptly railroaded to the United States. And now, of course, that's all over. It's all out in the open. They don't talk about that anymore. And Julian Assange, as per that secret indictment that got accidentally revealed by an incompetent State Department clerk, the plan is to, the second he steps outside the embassy, and right now the British are holding him on the grounds that he jumped bail on an accusation that has been dropped for 1.5 years. Okay, that he jumped bail on an accusation that wasn't valid. Okay, so obviously the only purpose is to enable England to put Julian Assange in the hands of Donald Trump. Okay, all right. So what I really want to talk about is what Julian Assange, WikiLeaks, and in fact the election. Okay, now the accusation, they never get specific about exactly how it is that that Donald Trump and Julian Assange conspired to get him in office with the help of Vladimir Putin. But if you what they claim is, first, there was a bunch of, it seems that some computer nerds in Petersburg were putting in Facebook postings against Hillary Clinton. Now, that's quite natural because everyone in Russia knows that Hillary Clinton is a tremendous Russia hater, more so than Donald Trump, who has fellow feelings with Trump as a fellow economic oligarch. Okay? And the idea that a few stupid postings on Facebook smuggled in by Petersburg are going to have an effect in an election, they're just a drop in the bucket compared to the huge volume of stuff done by the Trump administration by Cambridge Analytica. You've all heard of that? Which was definitely made in the USA. And the second accusation is even richer, that allegedly, and they've never provided any proof of this whatsoever, it's all assertion that the Russian government played a big role in the WikiLeaks revelations about Hillary Clinton. But the funny thing about this is that the WikiLeaks revelations about the dirty linen of Hillary Clinton that was revealed to the public, no one has ever claimed that a single word out of that stuff wasn't true. Not a word. Okay? And what did that include? A lot of interesting stuff. My favorite was when they found an email from Hillary Clinton about 4 or 5 years, about 5 or 6 years ago, on the subject of Saudi Arabia, in which she stated, oh, well, of course, we all know that Saudi Arabia funds ISIS, right? One would think that would be the sort of thing that the American public deserves to know about. And nowadays we have the whole stuff about Saudi Arabia. Here you have this guy Khashoggi. Who is he? He's an Islamic fundamentalist CIA asset. So when he gets killed, they get all indignant. But when hundreds of thousands of people of Yemen get killed, nah, that's no big deal. They didn't talk about that. There was bipartisan agreement for that. And let me tell you, the thing to understand about Saudi Arabia is the only difference between Saudi Arabia and ISIS is that Saudi Arabia has killed far, far more people than ISIS could ever think of. And I'll tell you, someone else has killed far more people than ISIS could ever think of in the area. In the terror bombing of Mosul and Raqqa, occupied by ISIS, those two cities, ancient bulwarks of Islamic and Middle Eastern culture, were simply destroyed, killing far, far more people than ISIS could ever think of. Okay? The main enemy of the world isn't ISIS. The main enemy of the world is U.S. imperialism. And all those who fight against it, like Julian Assange, need to be welcomed and supported. Free Julian Assange.
Thank you. Thank you. So, are there any other people who would like to speak? Open mic? Okay, sure.
I would just like to bring it back to Julian Assange. He's in the embassy alone. He's virtually completely isolated, and he's suffering from medical ailments. And I can't think of a better thing to help Julian Assange than the rebellions that's going on in Europe. The YellowVests, and how that could affect his situation could only be positive. We don't need a Vichy Macron. We don't need a Vichy Trump. We don't need a Vichy Pence, and we don't need a Vichy Hillary Clinton. Free Julian Assange and censorship.
Thank you. Free Julian Assange and censorship. So we also, last thing I want to say is we did get a resolution introduced at the San Francisco Labor Council to support Julian Assange. And Richard Stone, who's a delegate of the letter carriers, introduced it. And lo and behold, I think it would have passed, but the teachers union, community college leaders said, well, wasn't Julian Assange accused of being a rapist? That was what they said to stop the resolution. And a delegate from SEIU 1021 looked on the web and got an article saying that there had been no charges against him for being a rapist. She read out that news article at the meeting. They refused to withdraw their opposition, their amendment. What they wanted to do is they wanted to amend the resolution to say we will only support Julian Assange of criminal activity for being a whistleblower. But basically, they want to throw him away for being a sedition and for being he can't commit treason because he's an Australian. But they would like to put him away. So another delegate, Olga Miranda, who's Secretary Treasurer of the Labor Council and head of the janitors here, asked to table the motion. And it was voted to table, but it's going to come up in February, at the February meeting of the Labor Council. So we're going to do education and explain to the workers, at the delegates and workers at the Labor Council, that it's important that the labor movement, the working class, support Julian Assange, because working people need to know what those cables were. They need to defend journalists, all journalists and whistleblowers, because their lives are in danger. The environmental attacks, all the attacks that were exposed in these WikiLeaks are affecting working people. So we make a connection between the defense of Julian Assange and the need of working people to defend journalists, whistleblowers, and Julian Assange. So I want to thank you all for joining us, and we're going to meet Saturday at 10 o'clock at the library. Solidarity, free Julian Assange. Free Julian Assange.
Start marching with us! Stop watching us! 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 Start marching with 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 us! This is what police state looks like! This is what police state looks like!